guys, welcome back to Bonsai. It's your old pal Pinky, and don't freak out. I have not been shrunk. What I'm sitting next to today is just a massive clone engine. You know, we build a lot of small block clones. We build a lot of big block clones. But even on a big block, you take a big block, you bore it out, you punch it. You punch it out as big as you can. You stroke it. You're going to end up around 460 cc's, right? I mean, that's a big, single cylinder motor, but it's not the biggest. This is the biggest. This is a Zongshen GB620. They're lying. It's a 625 cc, but they call it the GB620. It's a massive. It's just. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. It's massive. So this thing's kind of been my Moby Dick for a while. I get all like Captain Ahab about this thing, and so bar she blows. Well, I can't really get into details on it, but basically, the universe has smiled upon us. A complete working, beautiful condition. It's used, but perfect. GB620 has fallen from the sky, and here it is. And so what we're going to do is what any reasonable person would do. We're going to completely disassemble it. We're going to see what's inside. We're going to try and throw some old school hot rod tricks at it. We're probably going to throw a little boost on this thing. I'm not going to lie to you. I think this thing with a little like AMR 300 supercharger would be just the ticket. And there's a reason why we would go in that direction. It's because there's just not a huge aftermarket. Predator, or clone motors, especially small blocks, big blocks. There's go online, you can get anything, any kind of performance part you want for these things. You can build them all kinds of different ways, and there's good stuff. I mean, it's just a plethora of performance parts. But when you get up to this thing is. It's a beast, it's a beast unto itself. Okay, it does not seem to share a lot of parts with, or any, as far as I know, with the big GX, the big block GXs. So it's a completely bespoke thing. It's a world unto itself, and very similar to the GX motors, but different. We'll talk about the motor in a second. First off. Let's talk about Zongshen, because I was like, Zongshen, I'm ugly American, I had no idea, right? That there's a whole world beyond North America. But it turns out there's a whole world beyond North America, including the country of China, where Zongshen was founded in 1992 by an average guy, Zongshen, decided he wanted to get into the motorcycle business, and in the years since then, Zongshen has grown into this massive company, huge player in motorcycles, industrial engines, that kind of stuff, scooters and quads and that kind of stuff in Asia and actually around the world. It turns out they sell motorcycles under the Zongshen brand. They also have a premium line called Cyclone that are actually pretty nice little bikes. They are partners with Harley-Davidson on smaller displacement motorcycles for the Asian market. They're also partners with Piaggio, the big Italian company that makes Vespa and Aprilia and Moto Guzzi and Derby and Giuliera. These guys are Zongshen. They're players. They make like 1 million plus motorcycles a year. They have 20,000 employees, assets valued at about $750 million US. These massive state-of-the-art factories where they're doing everything. They're doing, they do their own castings, for example. And the castings are beautiful. It's a beautiful casting. This is like an Italian level of casting. Made in China used to mean made in a back alley sweatshop out of, substandard shit, right? That's not the case anymore. There's a reason why the whole rest of the world's like, fuck China. And it's because fucking China, they got their act together, and the stuff coming out of China is good stuff, There's a reason why we as a country, eat that shit up, and it's because it's not bad stuff. Zongshen. Okay, what else can I tell about Zongshen? They sell motorcycles in China, in the UK, in Italy, in Spain, in Belarus, in Russia, in Argentina, in Colombia, in Brazil. They're big in e-bikes here in North America. They're players. They're players, and that's why this motor really interests me, is because, they decided let's just build a massive single cylinder clone. And they did, and here it is, and we have one, and we're going to do cool stuff to it. Let's talk about this motor. Look at this thing. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's chunky. She's a chunky monkey, and we're calling it the Chonkzilla. And so here's what we're going to do with Chonkzilla. Chonkzilla is a GB620, like I mentioned. I know what you're saying. You're like, I need one of these. It turns out you can get them. Zongshen.us is where you go and order one, and it'll appear, boom, on your doorstep. And you can do a build on one of these things too, if you dare. Let's talk a little bit about the specs on this motor. They rate it at like 20 horsepower. I've seen some places that's advertised at like 18.8. Some places call it like the 20 horsepower motor. It is 625cc, which is 38 cubic inches. Bore and stroke. Bore is kind of interesting. 96 millimeter bore, 86.5-ish stroke. That bore, 96 millimeters, 3.78 inches. That's the same bore diameter as like a 4.8 or 5.3 liter Chevy LS motor. So big honking piston in this thing. Might actually even be able to do a little machining and make a piston like that work in a motor like this. And that was kind of one of the challenges, is that there's not a huge aftermarket for this motor. With small and big block clones, you can get anything. I mean, whatever you want, go online. You can find 20 of them, competing on price, and build whatever you want. This thing, not so much. And so, and it's too bad, because it's actually a really, really cool motor. They are saying it's about 20 horsepower. They advertised it at like 32 foot-pounds of torque. It looks big, but it's not as heavy as you'd think. Weighs about 77 pounds, fully dressed. For perspective, that's about twice the weight of a 212 clone. So 3 times the displacement, twice the weight. It's a good start. It's got a proper electric starter. It's got pressurized oiling system, a real oil pump, not the splash type oiling you're going to see on the clone motors. 12 amp charging circuit with a legit voltage regulator. It's got a recoil starter. I guess you could probably recoil start it. I don't know. We haven't yet. We fired it up, but using the electric starter. And I don't know. It's just, this thing is huge. Stock is about 8.6 to 1 compression. That's about all I can really tell you, like right out of the box. There's not a whole lot of information out there on these things, to be honest with you. And it seems like, you find some videos where people have stuck them on like big go-karts and stuff like that, like buggies. And it seems like a great motor for that application. We are going to go a little bit different on this. What I'm thinking is we're going to pull this thing apart, take a look at what's inside. Since we can't really get a different cam for it, we're going to have to rely on some old school hot rod tricks. So, one of the most obvious, we'll do a little bit of porting on the head, get it to flow better. We might mill a little bit off the head and try to bump the compression up a little bit. I've heard that there's somebody who makes billet rods for these things. And so we're going to do some searching and see if we can, find a billet rod for it, because that would really be nice. Particularly because I think the answer to this motor is to throw boost at it. I think like one of those little AMR 300 superchargers would really wake this thing up, right? I can't fuck around with the cam and fill the cylinders that way, right? So instead, how about we just stuff them? So that's kind of the direction I think I'm going to go in. And then you might say, well, what do you do with a supercharged 625cc, you know, probably, you know, 50, 60 foot-pounds of torque. You know, I'd like to see it, you know, 40 horsepower at least. What do you do with that thing? And I think the only reasonable thing to do would be to stuff it into a Megamoto or Monster Moto 80 frame, which is like the tiniest mini bike frame in the world, and go racing. So that's kind of what we're gonna do. For right now, let's blow this thing apart and take a look at what's inside and see what's what, because she's a big bitch, and I kind of want to see what makes it tick. So let's do that. Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna finish my coffee. I'm gonna grab some tools. We're gonna get this thing going. Okay, gang, we've made a little bit of progress on pulling this thing apart. Here's where we're at. Got the side cover pulled off. It's a pretty interesting kind of setup. They've got a standard, you know, GX type recoil starter, just like you'd expect to see. The fan cover is not metal, it's plastic. Pretty nice heavy plastic, you know, got some reinforcing ribs in it. But rather than mount this to the engine and then mount the recoil, they have these studs that basically the whole thing just mounts to these studs. So the recoil is transferred directly to the block instead of the recoil force being transferred to this housing and then to the block. So the fan, pretty much what you'd expect, standard kind of plastic, you know, clone type fan. The flywheel is a pretty nice piece. Major charging system on it, like pretty substantial charging system. This motor in particular is just full of dirt, but nice flywheel, nice cast flywheel. Not sure if there's much opportunity to lighten that, but maybe it's not such a bad thing if we're gonna throw a supercharger on it. Little flywheel mass won't be a terrible thing. For some reason this motor is just filled with really fine dust. Really weird. I wonder where it came from. Weird. Anyway, gonna make some more progress here, and we'll check back in. I'm gonna spare you guys, you know, the footage of me with a, you know, with an impact gun pulling this thing apart, but we'll check back in as we reveal more interesting stuff. Really impressed with the casting on this thing. At first I was thinking there was like a lot of extra casting, but it turns out they're actually using that to reinforce the cylinder as well. So it's not just a cast shroud, it's actually structural. Pretty cool. This motor's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm going to tear it apart some more. About at the point where I'm ready to pull the side cover off, so we're going to take a look inside and see what's really going on with this thing. And we'll check back in a second once we do that. So anyway, got the valve cover pulled off. It's good news, it's a straight valve motor, not a Hemi. Valve springs seem pretty stout. They should spin for a while before they start floating, although I got a feeling they're pretty big valves in this thing too. It's a center pivot type rocker, kind of like similar to like the Champion rockers that a lot of people use on the smaller clone motors. Adjusters are on the push rod side. The push rods are nice, big, thick push rods. I mean, this stuff's all really well made. I think this motor's got a lot of potential. We're just going to have to uncover the hidden horsepower in it. So that's where we are so far. Next thing is going to happen is I'm going to pull the head off, do some pretty basic measurements on the piston, see how far in the hole it is, and we can go from there. So head's coming off, and I'll check back in with you guys when I have something else interesting to show you. Okay guys, we've made some progress, and just want to share with you what we found. Got the head off. Couple of quick observations. One, I don't know what the story on this motor was, but it's just filled with, it looks like it was running pretty fat, but I think this is mostly dirt. I think it's mostly dirt. This motor in particular seems to have lived in a really dusty, like super fine dust environment, and I'm guessing that it sucked up a bunch of dirt, which then turned kind of into carbon. It's not normal carbon stuff, although the plug did look a little black, but it's just caked with this stuff. So I don't know what the history of this motor was. Again, it magically fell from the sky. But we do know it runs, and but it looks like it's lived kind of a hard life. So just some real quick observations here. Looks like, well, that's kind of interesting. Had a fire ring gasket on it, but they also machined the block and the cylinder head almost like you'd expect to see for an O-ringed head. There's no O-ring, it was just a fiber gasket. Interesting. Really interesting. And not a conventional fire ring like you'd expect. You know, normally you'd expect to see a metal ring around the inside of this, but there's not one. So that's a little bit interesting. Valves, let's see. Just a quick measurement on the valves. Looks like we're talking about, oops, wow, 39 millimeter-ish. 39 millimeter, 39.5 millimeter intake. And again, this is not the most exact, but about 33 millimeter exhaust. Combustion chambers look workable. Nothing really stands out as terrible. It's got a nice flat top piston in it that, again, is just filthy. Absolutely, absolutely filthy. We're going to pull it apart a little bit more. I mean, look at this nasty shit. Terrible. Terrible. Anyway, I don't know, maybe they were running it without an air filter or something, but it just seems to be full of fine dust or dirt. So okay, anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the side cover off, and we'll check back in. Actually, before I do that, I want to measure piston depth and see how far in the hole this thing is. It's down there. It's down there pretty good. I'm gonna guess it's probably 40-50 thousandths in the hole. Let's just measure it. Zero. All right. Piston depth. There's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, wow, 55, 56 thousandths down. Now this is non-scientific. I just kind of eyeballed top dead center here, but I think I'm pretty close. We're about 56 thousandths down. Let me just check the other side real quick. All right. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 50, you know, I'm coming up a little further on this side, 58, 59, try it again here, yeah, I'm coming out with the same thing there, about 59. So yeah, piston is way down in the hole. That's good, I guess. We can probably do something with that. I don't know if we can machine this surface or what. We'll see. We'll get it all pulled apart. But yeah, pretty slick. I'm gonna pull the side case off and we'll take a look in there. Okay. We've got the side cover off and are confronted by some similarities to a conventional big GX, but but also some differences. First off, let's talk about the side cover. Again, these castings are just phenomenal. I'm so impressed with Zongshen's castings. This side cover has got the oil pump integrated into it. Plastic gear is a little bit concerning, but okay. Oh, it actually just pumps oil right out all over my bench. One thing that stands out is that there's no ball bearing like you would find in a GX type motor. Just a machined surface with a seal, and you know, again, they're pressurized oiling, so I guess they're figuring the oiling is going to do it. Crank's showing a little tiny bit of wear, but nothing terrible. I think mostly, you know, again, mostly just because this motor seems to have lived its life like in a dust factory or something. I don't know. Anyway, nice side cover. This is that cast-in sort of shrouding I was talking about that extends up the cylinder head, covers some of the cooling fans, or cooling fins rather. So I don't know what's going to happen with those on our build. I got a feeling we're probably going to machine some of that away because it's going to be a race motor. We really don't need the fan, to be honest with you. Anyway, again, really nice casting. Looking into the crankcase now, we see, just like the oil pump, we've got a plastic gear on the camshaft. The cam looks very similar to most clone cams. Well, look at the lifters. They are some beefy lifters. So everything on this motor, it's ridiculous. For this motor in particular, we've got a little bit of schmutz on the bottom. Nothing looks too disturbing. It doesn't look like metal so much as just goop. I really think that this thing just was clogged with dust. The camshaft, plastic gear, pretty beefy. It looks kind of like a big GX cam, to be honest with you. Although I'm guessing that the lobe spacing may not be the same as like a 390, you know, 420, 440, 460 type GX, but pretty much looks very similar to a GX. It's got a little decompression, so you can actually pull start the thing. So no big surprises there. Standard counterbalance shaft, just like you'd expect to see in pretty much any big GX. And that just pops right out of there. All right, kids, we got this thing torn apart. And here is what we are looking at. Basically, I mean, it's pretty similar to most, you know, big GX motors. A little bit, you know, obviously it looks different, but the basic architecture of the engine is real similar to a big block GX. We've got just a monster of a crank. The crank looks to be in okay shape. You know, again, this whole motor really seems like it's lived a very dusty, very dirty life, but I think the crank is serviceable. I don't see any major problems with it. The connecting rod and piston, pretty, I mean, you know, honestly not bad. It's a cast rod, but it's pretty beefy. Looks like there's some potential for working with that rod or maybe replacing it. I think what's really the biggest surprise of this thing is this piston. Extremely short skirt piston. I would have expected a longer skirt on the piston, and I'm not sure why they did this, but the result is that there's a great deal of scuffing on the piston skirt. And again, I think that this motor in particular has really suffered by living an extremely dusty, extremely dirty life. The bearing surfaces, again, don't look terribly bad because, you know, they're pressurized oiling, but this piston has definitely seen some contact with the cylinder walls. So, I mean, we're getting a lot, it must be, you know, a fair bit of piston rock. The bore, I'm going to clean this all up and then I'll shoot some close-ups on all this stuff, but there's the bore doesn't look terrible, but there's one really deep gouge, I mean fingernail deep gouge in the cylinder bore. We might try to just hone that I don't think we can bore it. That's a little bit of a problem. But I think the move right now is going to be to go ahead and clean all this stuff up, and we'll lay it out and kind of go piece by piece, talk a little bit about all the different stuff. So so there you go. But there is this breather case. We pulled the breather case apart. No big surprises in there. What you get is a little spring-loaded flapper that basically allows it to push but not pull air in through this breather. And then again, we'll cover this on the close-up, but sort of a labyrinth for the gases to get through, I guess, to let any oil settle out, and then it feeds out here to where the actual breather would have been attached to the stock air box. So sure, we can do something interesting with that. Just use it as a straight breather without all that foolishness. And there we have it. So I'm going to take this into the parts washer, clean it up a little bit, and see what we can make of it. I'm real concerned about that bore. It's not ideal. Okay, I'm going to clean this thing up, and maybe we'll just do a summary then. Okay, we're back. I'm joined by the lovely and talented Hondo.
Hey.
And we've had a chance to clean this stuff up and kind of give it a good inspection. Figured we would go ahead and kind of run through it, share our thoughts on this stuff. I guess, it's kind of a good news, bad news situation. The good news is, it turns out the Zongshen GB620 is legit. I mean, it's legit. It's really nice. The bad news is this particular motor obviously lived a really hard life, and it's, as it stands, it's probably too far gone for us to really do anything with. But it certainly has whetted our appetite to do something with one of these GB620 motors. So we're going to work in that direction in the future. But for right now, we have this thing here. It's been a great opportunity to get inside it, see what they're really made of, and whether or not it's worth building. And I can tell you, as a builder,
it's a really beefy engine.
Yeah, it's worth building for sure. So, all right, like Hondo says, it's a really beefy engine. I mean, if you take a look at the engine cases, I've said it a couple times during this video, the castings, the castings are really nice. It used to be like the Italians were known for really nice castings, right? The Germans were known for technology and engineering. Japanese were known for machining. The Italians were known for casting. So if you look like under the hood of a Ferrari or like Ducati motorcycles, the castings are beautiful. And so these are literally Italian level castings. Down to little details like this, like where they put the fins in here by the oil pump to keep the oil pump cool. Like somebody's thinking. Anyway, really nice casting, super beefy. I can't imagine ever breaking one of these castings. On the small blocks and even the big blocks, they're non-pressurized oiling, roller bearing or ball bearing. It's not uncommon to crack the cases. These cases, you'd have to try pretty hard. So anyway, super nice casting, super nice cases. Cylinder head?
Yeah.
Pretty nice head, right? The ports look pretty good right out of the box. Here, let's measure those ports. The valves, I think we measured already earlier. These ports end up being, exhaust port is 1.1, here, let's do it in millimeters. About 30.5 millimeter exhaust. Intake port measures out to, about 35 millimeters. So real big ports. The springs are pretty heavy. That uses real retainers, real automotive split style retainers. Really nice rocker arms. There's not really much in there that you would need to upgrade, honestly. A motor of this displacement, you're never going to turn this thing at 10,000 RPMs. So I think you know the valve springs would probably be adequate. I mean, push them things down; they're heavy.
No, very right.
Yeah. I mean that's not that's not some wimpy little spring. So yeah, super nice heads. They give you a really nice cast valve cover, all polished up and pretty. All of the cast engine stuff is actually seems to be a pretty good quality. I mean, actually, it's excellent quality. Normally, it's, you look. I mean, they've come in here and cleaned everything up, all the flash, all the casting flash. Stuff is beefy. It doesn't look like it's made out of Chinesium. The machine work on it seems to be really nice. They've gone to the trouble of having you got shims to set the end play on the balance shaft and the crankshaft. So I mean, good stuff. I mean, real heavy flywheel. The charging system is unbelievable for an industrial type engine. I mean, it's literally like a motorcycle type charging system. I mean, big stator, million magnets. Anyway, yeah, good stuff there. The rod looks like a pretty beefy piece. I think I could take a little bit of abuse. It's cast, but it doesn't look bad. The casting, again, they seem to have casting down. So, if there were a billet rod on the market, obviously you'd want to go with billet, but this is not a deal breaker. The piston. The fact that this looks and measures exactly the same as a 5.3 liter Chevy LS motor is really compelling for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, the wrist pin diameter is different. It's substantially different. 0.7. Change the inches. Yeah, 0.796. So kind of almost 0.8 here. The Chevy wrist pin is 0.945. So I mean, there's enough there that you probably couldn't just easily ream this out, but you might be able to, as Hondo suggested earlier, you might be able to rebore this to a GM wrist pin size by offset boring it, by basically keeping it down to try to keep as much meat on the top as possible. Anyway, I would think a billet rod with Chevy wrist pin size would be pretty cool, because not only would you get access to good forged, better pistons, better rings, you could also get oversized stuff, meaning that you could actually take this monster of a clone and bore it even bigger.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have enough meat.
It looks like you have enough meat. I mean, nice big thick sleeve. So I mean, can you imagine this thing, bored 650, 660?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's really compelling. That makes this a much more interesting engine. So we're going to kind of poke around a little bit here and see if maybe there's any interest anywhere for doing a billet rod with a Chevy wrist pin and Chevy pistons. So crankshaft, nice piece. Again, in keeping with their good castings. I mean, if you're going to cast metal, cast it nicely. Same thing with the cam, really nice casting. Crank is a nice heavy piece. Again, this is all pressurized oiling, so oil is introduced here, squirts out here, keeps everything happy and alive. I mean, I don't know. What do you think that weighs? It's a chunk.
30, 40 pounds.
Probably 30, 40 pounds. Yeah, easily. So then finally, I guess we could talk about like the starter motor and that kind of stuff, but it's just, just a standard starter motor. It's a standard kind of fan. Carburetor is pretty much exactly what you would expect to see on a clone, just much bigger. This is
26. 26.
Yeah, it's 26 in the Venturi. So, you could potentially, I mean, you could easily rejet these, the primary jet is right here. Main jet is right under that. So you could probably rejet this and get some more performance out of it. I would say with ports, with an intake port that big, it would be a shame to put a carburetor this small on it, especially, what was the valve? Like a 40 millimeter intake valve?
Yeah.
Rule of thumb, carburetor should be around the same size as the intake valve, you know, or within a couple of millimeters. So the 38 millimeter carburetor, you know, 40, like a nice flat slide 40.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Give it some juice.
That'd be nice, yeah. Yeah. But like I said before, I think this thing needs boost. I think it needs boost. I think that's the way to go. So, you know, in my dream perfect world, desired future state, I think is the term we used to use in the corporate world. In my desired future state, I would have another one of these motors that isn't ground up with sediment. I would have a billet rod with a Chevy wrist pin size so I can get forged pistons, and I would throw a little AMR 300 supercharger on it, just a little simple draw-through carburetor setup. Nothing would, it would be a beast.
We're going to have fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun. We're shooting for basically the fastest stock block drag mini bike in the United States. I mean, you know,
Why not?
why not, right? Somebody's got to have it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, stock block is a stock block, right? Nothing billet here. That's legit. That's legit. And honestly, the Zongshen 620 motor, it's legit. Again, 625 cc's. They call it the GB620. If you've got, if you've got something you need to repower, and you've got, you don't want to go with the expense and complexity of a V-twin, and the difficulty in packaging a big upright motor like that. Zongshen.us. I mean, you can get one of these in a couple of days, and it's a beast. It's an absolute beast. I forgot to mention the PTO. It's a standard 1-inch shaft, so all your torque converters, all your clutches, all that kind of stuff is going to fit right on there. Nothing special about that. So yeah, the Zongshen GB620, Zongshen.us, and or as we like to call it, the Chonkzilla, because she's chunky. So yeah, stay tuned. We're going to be back with these motors again somehow. We'll figure it out. We're going to have to get our hands on another one. But when we do, we're gonna build something out of it.
Yeah,
So,
we're going to have better news for the piston and rod.
Yep. Nothing but good stuff coming on this one, hopefully. Or, or we just had a chance to pull apart a 620 and that's the end of it. So, we're gonna fingers crossed.
I hope not.
I hope not. No, I'd love to build one of these. It's pretty badass.
Yeah.
It's a super cool motor. So, all right. Well, anyway, thanks for tuning in, and get yourself a 620. They're badass. Bye, America.